The billionaire was famous for his wealth and confidence. Everywhere he went, people knew about his riches. He had enormous houses, fast cars, and even private jets. But what made him really well known wasn't just his money. It was the way he liked to show it off and challenge people. He liked to make impossible tasks for others and laugh when they failed. Everyone thought no one could ever beat him, and most people didn't even try. In a small part of the city, far from the glittering world of the billionaire, lived a maid and her young daughter. Their life was simple. The mother worked long hours cleaning houses to make sure they had enough food and could pay for small things they needed. The daughter was quiet and curious. She spent her time reading old books she borrowed from neighbors, solving little puzzles, and learning things that caught her attention. She didn't have expensive toys or gadgets, but she had a sharp mind and a keen sense of observation. People often overlooked her because she didn't speak much or show off. But inside, she was confident in her own way. One day, the city was buzzing with news. The billionaire had announced a challenge unlike any other. He said he would give anyone who could complete a certain task $100 million. The task seemed impossible to most. People whispered about it in cafes and on the streets, shaking their heads in disbelief. The challenge involved something tricky that required intelligence, patience, and perhaps a bit of courage. The billionaire made sure everyone knew that he would mock anyone who tried and failed. He wanted to see people struggle, and he enjoyed the idea of others looking foolish. When the maid heard about the challenge, she only smiled and shook her head. She knew her daughter had a special way of thinking. She had noticed how she could solve difficult problems and how quietly she understood things others missed. She didn't tell anyone else about it because she knew most people would laugh or discourage her. Instead, she quietly encouraged her daughter to try, believing in her more than anyone else did. The daughter, on the other hand, listened carefully to the news. She had heard stories about the billionaire before, how he liked to laugh at people who failed, and how he underestimated anyone who didn't have money. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Many grown-ups had already tried and given up, but she wasn't afraid. In her mind, the task was not about money or fame. It was about solving something that others had given up on. She liked challenges, and she wanted to prove to herself that she could think differently from everyone else. As the day of the challenge approached, the city was filled with people talking about it. Some people wanted to try and dreamed of winning the huge prize. Others just came to watch and see how the billionaire would react when someone failed. But no one took the daughter seriously. They didn't even notice her standing quietly in the crowd. She wasn't dressed in fancy clothes. She didn't have any supporters or cameras following her. But that didn't bother her. She was ready. Meanwhile, the billionaire was preparing for his performance. He knew he would be the center of attention and enjoyed the thought of it. He practiced mocking lines in front of a mirror, imagining the expressions on people's faces when they failed. He was confident no one could complete the task. His arrogance was clear. He believed that money, experience, and power gave him an unbeatable advantage. He never thought someone so young and so humble could surprise him. The daughter spent her days quietly thinking and practicing. She didn't have the same resources as others, but she had patience and creativity. She analyzed what the task could involve and made small plans to approach it in her own way. She observed people, studied patterns, and practiced mental exercises that helped her think faster and smarter. She didn't brag about her plans or talk to anyone about them. Her focus was on understanding, not on impressing others. People in the city were curious about who might try the challenge. Most of the names being mentioned were adults with some reputation, people who were confident and experienced. They were all talking about how they would succeed. They didn't even see the girl. They assumed someone young couldn't compete. Even the media ignored her presence. But she didn't need anyone to notice her. Her mind was clear, and she had a quiet determination that was growing stronger with each day. The day before the challenge, the daughter stayed up late, thinking about the possible ways to solve it. She imagined different scenarios, tried to guess the tricks that might be involved, and practiced responses in her mind. She wrote down small notes and observations in a notebook she kept hidden. She wasn't trying to compete with anyone else. She was trying to be ready for herself, to face the task with confidence and intelligence. Early the next morning, the city streets were crowded with people going to the place where the challenge would be held. News reporters, spectators, and participants filled the area. The billionaire arrived in style with his expensive car and entourage. He smiled arrogantly at the crowd, confident that no one would succeed. He looked around and laughed, pointing at some of the participants, clearly enjoying the thought of mocking them later. But when he noticed the daughter quietly standing at the edge of the crowd, he didn't pay much attention. She looked too small, too quiet, and too simple to be a threat. The daughter took a deep breath. She knew the challenge would not be easy, but she also knew something the billionaire didn't. The task could be completed in a way that was clever, not just flashy. She didn't need to show off. She only needed to use her mind, her observation skills, and her patience. She felt a quiet confidence in herself that made her feel ready. The crowd was buzzing with excitement. Some people whispered about the chances of winning. Others were talking about how much fun it would be to see someone fail. The billionaire walked onto the stage and began explaining the rules of the challenge. His tone was mocking and condescending. He looked at the participants with amusement, clearly expecting to laugh at their failures. The daughter listened carefully. Every word mattered. She noticed details others missed. She kept calm while others around her grew nervous. She didn't panic or show fear. She was observing, thinking, and preparing. The crowd laughed at some of the participants who made small mistakes. The billionaire smiled, ready to humiliate them. But the daughter remained still, her mind focused, knowing that the game had only just begun. As the challenge officially started, participants stepped forward one by one. Some were confident and rushed, others hesitated and failed quickly. The billionaire laughed, pointing out their mistakes, enjoying the sense of superiority he felt. But the daughter waited patiently. She watched and learned from each attempt. She noticed patterns, understood tricks, and prepared herself to act when the right moment came. Her patience was her strength. The day passed slowly, with the crowd watching and the billionaire mocking. The tension in the air was high. Everyone assumed the challenge was impossible. But the daughter was calm. She knew she had prepared for this in her own quiet way. She didn't need anyone's approval or support. She only needed her mind, her focus, and her courage. By the end of the day, most participants had failed, leaving the billionaire laughing and the crowd disappointed. But the daughter knew her time was coming. She had learned from everyone else's mistakes and felt ready. The billionaire had no idea who she was or what she could do. He continued to mock, unaware that the real challenge was about to appear in the quiet, unexpected presence of the maid's daughter. As the sun began to set, the daughter stepped forward. She looked calm, composed, and ready. The crowd barely noticed her at first. The billionaire, still confident, prepared to mock her before she even began. But inside, she felt something strong and quiet. She knew she could do what others had failed to do. She knew that her mind, patience, and courage were her real advantages. The stage was set, and the moment that would change everything was about to begin. The daughter had spent weeks quietly preparing for this day, and now it was finally here. She had watched how people failed, how the billionaire laughed, and how the crowd reacted. Every mistake had taught her something, and she had learned to remain calm under pressure. She didn't care about the audience or the media. Her only focus was the challenge itself and finding the right way to approach it. She knew the billionaire was confident, but she also knew that confidence could blind a person to what was really happening. Before stepping up, she took a moment to steady her thoughts. She remembered all the nights she had spent thinking, observing, and practicing quietly in her room. She remembered the encouragement her mother had given her, always reminding her to trust her instincts and her mind. The daughter had always been taught that intelligence, patience, and courage mattered more than wealth or fame. Now, she would show that lesson in the most unexpected way. The billionaire looked down at her and laughed. He had not noticed her at first, and now that she was standing in front of him, he could hardly believe it. "Do you really think you can do this?" he asked, his voice dripping with amusement. The crowd snickered, assuming this was going to be another easy failure to watch. The daughter smiled slightly and nodded. She didn't need to say anything more. Her confidence was quiet but firm. The first part of the challenge began. It required thinking carefully, paying attention to detail, and making smart decisions quickly. Many of the previous participants had tried to rush through it, thinking speed alone would win the prize. They had failed miserably. The daughter, however, was patient. She took her time, observing every element, every pattern, and every clue. She didn't feel the pressure of the crowd or the billionaire's mocking voice. She focused entirely on the task, carefully analyzing each step. The crowd began to notice that she was different from the others. While others had panicked or made careless mistakes, she moved with calm confidence. She didn't speak unnecessarily, didn't show fear, and didn't rush. People started whispering, unsure whether she might actually succeed. The billionaire, meanwhile, was getting slightly uncomfortable. He had expected to humiliate another participant, but this girl didn't look like the others at all. There was something about her presence that he didn't understand. As she worked through the first part of the challenge, she encountered a particularly tricky section. Many had given up here before, convinced it was impossible. She paused and thought carefully. She remembered a small detail she had noticed earlier, a pattern that others had overlooked. She used that insight to make her move, and it worked perfectly. A small cheer erupted from the audience, surprising both the billionaire and those around them. The daughter didn't react much, but inside, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She was on the right path. The billionaire frowned. He was not used to seeing people succeed, especially someone so young and unassuming. He tried to regain his composure, masking his surprise with a forced laugh. "Lucky guess," he muttered, though his tone lacked its usual confidence. The daughter simply kept going, moving steadily through the challenge, step by step, with intelligence guiding her every action. Meanwhile, the crowd's excitement grew. People began to whisper among themselves. Could she actually do it? They asked. She's doing what no one else could. The daughter remained focused, ignoring the noise. She had learned long ago that attention could distract the mind. She kept her eyes on the task, her mind sharp and clear, and her movements deliberate and precise. As she reached the middle section, the challenge became more complex. It required not just intelligence, but patience, observation, and creativity. Many participants had made small mistakes here that caused them to fail completely. The daughter studied the problem carefully. She noticed a subtle clue in the way the task was structured, something that no one else had seen. Using her intuition and careful reasoning, she made a move that others had not considered, and it worked flawlessly. The billionaire's face changed. He was no longer amused. His eyes widened slightly as he realized that this young girl was actually succeeding. He tried to hide it behind a smile, but it was clear he was concerned. The audience could sense the shift. The arrogant, confident billionaire was no longer in full control. The daughter, calm and composed, continued her methodical approach, step by step, ignoring the rising tension. People began to watch her with awe. They had come expecting failure and mockery, but now they were witnessing something remarkable. She didn't boast, she didn't show off, and she didn't seek attention. She simply focused on what needed to be done. Her intelligence, patience, and determination were shining through in a way that no one had anticipated. The billionaire tried to intervene. He gave instructions, hints, and even small distractions, hoping to throw her off. He whispered jokes, tried to provoke her, and pointed out supposed difficulties that would make anyone else nervous. But the daughter remained unshaken. She had anticipated distractions and was ready for them. Every move she made was deliberate, careful, and precise. She was no longer just participating. She was mastering the challenge. At one point, a particularly difficult section required combining information from several earlier steps. Many participants had forgotten details, overlooked patterns, or panicked under pressure. The daughter paused, closed her eyes briefly, and recalled everything she had observed and practiced. She connected the pieces in her mind and made her move. It worked perfectly. The audience gasped. Even the billionaire could no longer hide his shock. He stared at her, speechless for a brief moment, unsure how to respond. The daughter had not only completed what others failed to do, but she had done it with grace and calm intelligence. She had turned a challenge that had seemed impossible into something achievable through observation, reasoning, and focus. The crowd began to cheer softly, and whispers spread quickly. This girl might actually win the billionaire's prize. The billionaire, once so confident and mocking, was now uncertain and troubled. She continued through the remaining parts of the challenge with the same methodical approach. She did not rush, she did not panic, and she did not let the billionaire's reputation or power intimidate her. She relied on her intelligence, her preparation, and her patience. Every step she took was deliberate, and every move brought her closer to completing the task successfully. The crowd watched in amazement. People who had come to see failure were now witnessing something extraordinary. They were seeing a young girl, quiet and humble, challenge someone so powerful and arrogant, and she was winning. The atmosphere changed from expectation of ridicule to anticipation of triumph. The daughter, aware of this change, remained focused. She knew that her job was not done until she had completed the entire challenge. The billionaire, now visibly unsettled, tried to maintain his composure. He muttered to his assistants, trying to find a way to regain control. He had not expected anyone to succeed, especially someone so young and underestimated. He realized that arrogance had blinded him, and for the first time he faced uncertainty. He watched her carefully, trying to predict her next move, but she remained calm and precise, following her own plan. As the day wore on, the daughter moved steadily forward. Every obstacle was met with intelligence, patience, and courage. She had anticipated many challenges, observed others' failures, and used all her skills to navigate the task. The crowd grew more excited, whispers turning into cheers and gasps of admiration. They were seeing a real-life triumph, a story that would be remembered for years. The billionaire finally realized that this was not a lucky guess or a momentary success. This girl had planned, observed, and executed with skill far beyond what he had expected. He had underestimated her, and now the truth was clear. She was extraordinary. The crowd sensed the shift. The once mocking billionaire was no longer in control of the narrative. The story was changing, and it was about to become unforgettable. By the end of the day, the daughter had passed the most difficult sections of the challenge. She had remained calm, focused, and methodical, earning the quiet respect of the crowd and shaking the confidence of the billionaire. Her patience, intelligence, and courage had guided her through obstacles that had seemed impossible. She had shown that determination and clever thinking could triumph over arrogance and power. As the sun began to set, she prepared for the final stages of the challenge. The crowd was on edge, excited, and inspired. The billionaire, once so sure of himself, was now uncertain and speechless. He watched her closely, realizing that his arrogance had blinded him. She had not only survived the challenge so far, but had done it with grace, intelligence, and quiet strength. The final part of the challenge was ahead, and everyone could sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. The final stage of the challenge had arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. The crowd was restless, filled with anticipation, unable to believe what they were seeing. The young girl had already surpassed expectations, passing sections that had broken the best participants before her. People whispered among themselves, some cheering quietly, others simply staring in awe. The billionaire, once confident and mocking, now stood frozen, uncertain how to react. His arrogance had been shaken, and for the first time he felt challenged by someone he had underestimated. The daughter took a deep breath, her calmness unbroken. She was aware of the eyes on her, but she didn't allow them to distract her. Every step she had taken until now had prepared her for this moment. She remembered all the nights she had spent observing, thinking, and preparing in her humble home. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Trust yourself and your mind. You are capable of more than they know." Those words had guided her through every step, and now they gave her strength to face the final part of the challenge. The billionaire's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "Do you really think you can finish this?" he asked, attempting to mask his worry with sarcasm. The daughter smiled faintly and nodded. She didn't need to answer with words. Her confidence was evident in the steady way she approached the task. The audience noticed the stark contrast between her calm demeanor and the billionaire's forced bravado. It was a subtle but powerful moment, showing that courage and intelligence could outweigh wealth and arrogance. The final challenge required a combination of all the skills tested before: observation, logic, creativity, and courage. Many had failed here because they tried to rely on one skill alone, ignoring the rest. The daughter studied the task carefully. She noticed small details that no one else had paid attention to, tiny patterns in the structure of the challenge that gave her clues on how to proceed. She didn't rush, and she didn't hesitate. Every move was deliberate, each decision made with care and precision. The billionaire leaned forward, studying her every move. He tried to predict what she would do, thinking he could anticipate her mistakes, but she was moving in a way he had never seen before. She wasn't following a predictable pattern. She was thinking creatively, using her intelligence in a way that surprised him. He felt a strange mixture of admiration and frustration. He had always believed that his wealth and experience gave him an edge over everyone, but this young girl had shown him that true talent and intelligence could not be bought. The audience was silent, holding their breath as she progressed. She solved puzzles, made strategic moves, and responded to challenges with clarity and insight. Each success added to the tension, as people realized she might actually complete the entire task. Some spectators whispered that she was destined to win, while others shook their heads in disbelief, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. The billionaire's face turned serious. He had tried to intimidate others with his presence and wealth, but it was clear that his tactics were failing. He had underestimated the quiet determination of the maid's daughter. He watched closely as she approached the most difficult section, the part that had defeated many others. She paused for a moment, taking in all the information, recalling every detail she had observed in the previous stages. Her mind worked quickly and clearly, connecting clues and strategies with precision. The task seemed impossible, but she approached it with a methodical strategy. She used observation, logic, and creativity in combination. The audience could see her thinking process unfold, and they were captivated. The billionaire tried to intervene, offering hints and commentary meant to confuse her, but she remained unaffected. Her focus was unbreakable. She had learned long ago to ignore distractions and trust in her abilities. As she solved each segment of the final part, the crowd grew more animated. Murmurs turned into whispers of awe, and whispers turned into applause. People could hardly believe what they were seeing. The daughter had not only passed the earlier sections but was now completing the most difficult part with remarkable skill. Her intelligence, patience, and determination were shining through, leaving everyone inspired. The billionaire struggled to maintain his composure. He had mocked so many others before, enjoying their failures, but now he could do nothing. He realized that this young girl had prepared herself in a way that no one else had. He could not predict her, could not anticipate her moves, and could not find a weakness. His arrogance had blinded him, and now he had to accept that she was extraordinary. She continued steadily, moving through the final part with precision. Each step was calculated, each decision thoughtful. The audience watched, breathless, as she approached the last obstacle. It was the culmination of everything she had faced before, the moment that would determine the outcome. She paused briefly, taking a deep breath, recalling all her preparation and everything she had learned from observing others' mistakes. Then, with quiet confidence, she made her move. The final step was executed flawlessly. A moment of silence followed as the crowd processed what had just happened. The impossible had been accomplished. The billionaire, once so certain of his superiority, stood frozen. He could not hide his shock. The young girl had completed the challenge, outsmarting the one person who had thought himself unbeatable. The audience erupted into cheers, applause, and shouts of admiration. They were witnessing a triumph that would be remembered for years. The daughter, calm and composed, did not boast or celebrate loudly. She had achieved her goal with grace and intelligence. She smiled faintly, acknowledging the crowd's admiration but remaining humble. Her victory was quiet, yet powerful. She had shown that intelligence, patience, and courage could triumph over arrogance and wealth. The billionaire finally spoke, his voice subdued. I did not expect this, he admitted, his tone revealing a rare humility. For the first time, he had been humbled by someone so young and unassuming. He had underestimated her, and now he had to recognize her skill and intelligence. It was a lesson he would not forget. The crowd continued to cheer, celebrating the unexpected triumph. People spoke excitedly about the young girl who had completed the impossible, showing that determination and clever thinking could overcome any obstacle. Her story spread quickly, inspiring others to believe in their abilities, no matter their background or resources. After the challenge, the daughter was approached by the billionaire. There was no mockery, no arrogance, only a genuine acknowledgement of her skill. He extended a hand, a silent recognition that she had accomplished something extraordinary. The daughter accepted with a polite nod, her humility shining through. She did not need the billionaire's praise to know her worth. She had proven it to herself and to the world. The aftermath of her victory was immediate. Media outlets covered the story, highlighting the remarkable intelligence and determination of the maid's daughter. People were inspired, and discussions about her strategy and calm approach became widespread. The story emphasized that true talent and preparation mattered more than wealth or outward confidence. The billionaire, meanwhile, had to reflect on his own behavior. He had spent so much time believing his wealth and status made him unbeatable, but this experience had changed his perspective. He realized that underestimating others, especially those from humble backgrounds, was a mistake. He had been humbled by a young girl whose intelligence and courage had surpassed his expectations. The daughter returned home quietly, her mind already reflecting on the journey she had taken. She had faced challenges, remained patient and focused, and ultimately triumphed. She knew that the lessons she had learned, the value of observation, patience, courage, and intelligence, would stay with her forever. Her mother embraced her, proud not just of her success but of her character and determination. The city continued to talk about the challenge for weeks. People admired the young girl who had defeated the billionaire, and her story became an example of how humility, intelligence, and perseverance could change lives. The challenge, which had been designed to mock and humiliate, had instead become a story of triumph, inspiration, and human resilience. Everyone who witnessed it would remember that day, when the quiet maid's daughter completed the impossible and left a billionaire speechless. The daughter had done what no one had thought possible. The impossible task had been completed by someone so young, so humble, and so unexpected. The crowd continued to cheer, some people clapping, some crying out in amazement. Cameras flashed, capturing every moment. People wanted to remember the moment when the underdog had not only competed but triumphed over wealth, power, and arrogance. It was a story that would be told for years. The billionaire stood frozen, his face pale, his usual arrogance replaced by shock. He had believed that his confidence, wealth, and status made him untouchable. He had mocked everyone who had tried before, assuming that no one could outsmart him. But here was a young girl, quiet and unassuming, who had done what he could not imagine. He was speechless, and for the first time he felt the humility that comes from being outsmarted. People around him were reacting with excitement. They had expected failure and ridicule, but what they saw was brilliance, patience, and courage. The daughter's success was not just about completing the task. It was about proving that intelligence, careful observation, and determination could overcome challenges that seemed impossible. Everyone realized that her victory was deserved, not a fluke or luck. The daughter, calm and collected, did not boast. She stood quietly, her eyes scanning the crowd briefly, acknowledging the applause with a faint smile. She had worked hard, prepared thoroughly, and trusted herself. Her success was proof that preparation, focus, and confidence in one's abilities mattered more than outward appearances or wealth. People admired not only what she had done but how she had carried herself through it all. The billionaire slowly approached her. The crowd watched as he extended his hand, not in mockery, but in genuine acknowledgement. "You are truly remarkable," he said, his voice steady but tinged with humility. "I underestimated you, and I am speechless. You have taught me a lesson I will not forget." The daughter nodded politely and shook his hand. She did not need to boast. Her actions had already spoken louder than words. The billionaire, for all his power, had been humbled by someone who had used her mind and courage to succeed. The atmosphere in the room was electric. People were talking excitedly about the challenge and the extraordinary girl who had completed it. Some were inspired to believe that if she could do it, they could also face challenges with intelligence and patience. Her story spread quickly through the city, through news channels, social media, and word of mouth. People could not stop talking about how someone so humble had achieved something so incredible. The daughter's mother embraced her tightly, tears in her eyes. She had always believed in her daughter's abilities, even when no one else did. She remembered the nights spent encouraging her, reminding her to trust her mind and heart. She felt proud not just because of the success, but because her daughter had remained humble, patient, and kind throughout the process. It was a victory of character as much as talent. Meanwhile, the billionaire was reflecting on the experience. He had faced many challenges in his life, but this had humbled him in a way that no amount of wealth or power could. He realized that his arrogance had blinded him to the talent and intelligence of others. He had underestimated someone based on age and appearance, and the lesson was clear. He would remember this moment, not with anger, but with a newfound respect for skill, patience, and courage. People in the audience were discussing her strategies, her patience, and the calm way she had approached every step. They were inspired by her quiet determination and intelligence. Some young people in the crowd felt motivated to try things they had thought were impossible. The daughter had become a symbol of hope, proof that preparation and confidence in one's own abilities could triumph over the obstacles created by arrogance or privilege. In the following days, the story spread beyond the city. Newspapers, online platforms, and television channels covered the event extensively. Interviews were conducted with the daughter and her mother, highlighting the values of patience, intelligence, and humility. People admired how she had stayed calm under pressure and handled attention with grace. The billionaire himself spoke about the lesson he had learned and praised the young girl publicly, acknowledging her exceptional abilities. The daughter continued to live her life quietly. She returned to her studies and her simple routines, but she carried with her the lessons learned from the challenge. She understood the importance of preparation, observation, and patience. She knew that true success was not measured by wealth or recognition, but by the ability to face challenges with courage and intelligence. Her humility remained intact, even in the face of fame and public admiration. Her mother was proud and supportive, knowing that her daughter had achieved something extraordinary. They both understood that while the prize was significant, the true reward was the experience, the personal growth, and the knowledge that intelligence and determination could overcome even the most difficult challenges. They were aware that this moment would inspire countless others, showing that anyone, regardless of background, could succeed with focus and courage. The billionaire, on the other hand, changed his perspective on how he treated people. He had been humbled, and it made him reflect on his behavior. He realized that mocking others or assuming superiority based on wealth or status could not replace true understanding or respect. The experience with the young girl had given him a new appreciation for talent and intelligence, no matter where it came from. It was a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. As the days passed, the city continued to talk about the challenge. The daughter's story inspired schools, workplaces, and communities. People admired her intelligence, patience, and courage. They spoke about her humility and the way she had handled success. She had become a role model, not because she had defeated a billionaire, but because she had shown that careful thinking, determination, and grace could overcome even the most intimidating obstacles. The daughter and her mother returned to their normal life, but things had changed. They had experienced a moment of triumph that no one could take away. The daughter had proven herself not only to the world but to herself. She had faced a challenge, overcome obstacles, and remained humble and kind throughout. The experience had strengthened her confidence and shaped her perspective on life, showing her the power of intelligence, patience, and courage. The billionaire, now humbled, continued his work and ventures, but he carried with him the lesson of respect and the importance of acknowledging talent wherever it appeared. He became more thoughtful, more aware of the people around him, and more careful not to underestimate anyone. The experience had changed him, just as it had inspired everyone who witnessed the daughter's triumph. The city remembered the day as extraordinary. The young girl's quiet courage and intelligence had turned what was meant to be a display of arrogance and wealth into a story of inspiration, humility, and human triumph. People spoke of her for years to come, celebrating not just the victory but the values she represented. Her story became a timeless lesson, reminding everyone that determination, intelligence, and patience could overcome any obstacle, no matter how impossible it seemed. Life did not suddenly become loud or chaotic for the daughter after the challenge ended. In fact, the days that followed were surprisingly calm. She returned home with her mother, walking the same streets, passing the same shops, and greeting the same neighbors. But inside her, something had changed. She carried a quiet confidence, not because the world was now watching her, but because she had proven something important to herself. She had faced doubt, pressure, and ridicule, and she had stayed true to who she was. People around the city continued to talk about her. Some spoke about her intelligence, others about her calm nature, and many about how she had humbled a powerful man without raising her voice. Schools invited her to speak, not as a celebrity, but as an example of focus and determination. She spoke simply, sharing how observation, patience, and practice helped her succeed. She never acted superior. She reminded others that anyone could learn, grow, and improve if they stayed curious and disciplined. The prize money was handled carefully. With guidance, the daughter and her mother made wise choices. They improved their living conditions, paid off old worries, and invested in education. The daughter did not rush into luxury or excess. She understood that money could make life easier, but it could not replace values. She continued to study, read, and learn, just as she had before. Her routine remained simple, grounded, and focused on growth. The mother watched her daughter with pride and gratitude. She saw how her child had remained humble despite the attention and opportunity. She remembered the long years of hard work, the sacrifices, and the quiet moments of encouragement at home. Seeing her daughter respected for her mind and character meant more than any reward. It reminded her that patience and belief could change lives in ways money never could. The billionaire also experienced lasting change. The challenge, once meant as entertainment and mockery, had become a turning point in his life. He spoke openly about the lesson he had learned, admitting that he had underestimated others based on appearances and status. He began supporting programs that focused on education, problem-solving, and opportunity for young people from modest backgrounds. He no longer saw intelligence as something tied to privilege, but as something that could appear anywhere. Whenever he was asked about that day, he did not speak about losing or winning. He spoke about respect. He spoke about how silence, patience, and careful thinking could be more powerful than loud confidence. He often said that being speechless was not a weakness, but a reminder that there was always more to learn. The crowd that once gathered for mockery had instead witnessed growth, humility, and transformation. The daughter's story traveled far beyond the city. People from different places shared it as an example of quiet strength. Online discussions focused not on the money, but on the mindset she had shown. Parents shared the story with their children. Teachers used it as an example in classrooms, and many people found courage in knowing that intelligence and preparation still mattered in a noisy world. Despite all this attention, the daughter stayed grounded. She spent time helping others learn, especially those who doubted themselves. She volunteered at local learning centers, encouraging children to think carefully, ask questions, and believe in their abilities. She never claimed to have all the answers. Instead, she showed others how to observe, practice, and remain patient when things felt difficult. Over time, the excitement faded, but the impact remained. The challenge was remembered not as a show of wealth, but as a moment when assumptions were broken. People remembered the quiet girl who stepped forward when others laughed, who listened when others rushed, and who succeeded without needing to prove anything loudly. Her strength had been calm, and that made it lasting. The city changed in small but meaningful ways. People became more open to listening, less quick to judge, and more willing to encourage hidden talent. The story reminded them that brilliance did not always announce itself. Sometimes it waited patiently, growing quietly until the right moment arrived. For the daughter, the journey was never about defeating anyone. It was about understanding herself and trusting her preparation. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, and she welcomed them with the same calm focus. She had learned that confidence did not need noise, and success did not need arrogance. What mattered most was staying true to one's values. As years passed, the story remained relevant. Not because of the amount of money involved, but because of the message it carried. It reminded people that real strength often appears in unexpected places, and real intelligence is shown through patience and humility. The challenge that was meant to entertain had instead inspired countless people to look inward and believe in quiet potential. On quiet evenings, the daughter would sit with her mother, talking about ordinary things. There was no need to relive the moment constantly. It had become part of their lives, not the definition of them. They understood that true success was not a single event, but a way of thinking and living every day. The billionaire, now older and wiser, often thought about that day. He did not regret it. In fact, he was grateful for it. Being humbled had given him clarity. It reminded him that learning never ends, and respect should never be withheld. The experience had reshaped his understanding of leadership, success, and human potential. In the end, the story did not belong only to the daughter or the billionaire. It belonged to everyone who had ever been underestimated, overlooked, or doubted. It belonged to those who worked quietly, learned patiently, and waited for the right moment to step forward. The world moved on, as it always does, but the lesson stayed behind. A lesson about calm strength, thoughtful action, and the power of believing in oneself even when no one else does. The maid's daughter had not just completed a challenge. She had changed perspectives, inspired hope, and shown that sometimes the quietest voice carries the strongest truth. And long after the applause faded, what remained was simple and clear. Intelligence guided by humility could open doors that arrogance never could. That was the real reward, and it was worth far more than any prize.